Welcome back to the You Can Too podcast. On today's show, we have Ben Bergeron on the show. He is a profound individual, to say the least. He's the author of Chasing Excellence and Unlocking Potential and many, many other things. I'd love to start for you at a young age where you were an introvert and you seen yourself as a follower by taking a couple tests, and that was the kind of mindset that you took on young. But I see you as, and I think a lot of people see you as, is probably one of the biggest leaders in the world, truthfully. So I'm curious for you growing up, what was your internal narrative and how were you able to transform to the person that you are today?
Oh, uh, I don't know where the introversion came from, but I definitely was very self-aware, probably
Mm,
to a fault,
yeah.
and was very self-critical and cautious of putting myself out there for fear of saying or doing the wrong thing. So I found a lot of comfort in the shadows and found it very easier just to be the quiet kid than the loud one. And like anything, your identity dictates um, it builds upon itself. I am the person that how you fill in the blank is probably the one of the more powerful things that you can say or um, uh, will manifest into itself.
Mm,
And I saw myself as the quiet, introverted kid that didn't make a lot of friends or a lot of noise. And it was also very domain specific though. When I was in certain group friends, I wasn't that, but when I was in others, in new environments, I found a lot of comfort in being an observer.
yeah.
And if I was allowed, or if I found myself in an environment where I found great levels of comfort, or where I felt I could contribute in a productive way, I it was different. I got very excited about sharing and helping other people. And when I found this role as being a coach, um, and kind of the thought leadership and sharing what I think is a productive way to navigate life, that allowed me an opportunity to bust out of my shell a little bit and um, feel more comfortable being a leader. Now, I wasn't a good leader when I first started my business or first started coaching. So something I developed over time to where I'm still trying to develop that skill set. I think everybody and every leader is still always in that journey of trying to become the best versions of themselves. And I certainly feel like I'm continuing on that path, but it it definitely did not happen until later into my 30s.
Mm,
You know, and I think that is that saying that in your 20s you're incredibly concerned about what other people think of you.
mhm.
In your 40s, you stop caring what other people think of you, and in your 60s, you realize no one was thinking about you anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm in that 40s now, so it's not so much about what other people think, and it's liberating, and it allows you to have a little bit more authenticity and confidence in sharing what I believe is an effective way to navigate life, which is all I'm trying to do to help people.
Yeah. And you're doing an amazing job at it. I know
Thanks,
that.
James.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm really excited to have you on. And I know 9/11 was a moment for you where it was a really pivotal moment in life. I see it as, for me, the pivotal moment was COVID, where it was isolation, and it allowed me to be reflective with myself, a part of myself that I didn't realize how much of an introvert I was. And it kind of helped me realize that I wanted my life more of meaning, of impact. And it led me down this path of entrepreneurship and podcasting and everything else. I know the same thing for you. Can you tell me about Wyoming and what you did in that time to really transform your life, really, and be able to take that massive leap to really get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think COVID might be your generation's version of 9/11 was for us. It was the thing
Yeah.
that was so impactful for at least for me, and being from Boston, that's where those planes left from. It really hit home. So when 9/11 happened, I was working in finance in Boston at the time and realized just what you just said. My life was not void of meaning, not
Yeah.
void of purpose or passion, but just not to the level that I wanted it to be or I believed it could be. It
Yeah.
was very status quo, punching the clock, climbing the corporate ladder, doing the 9 to 5. I think of it as that Dave Matthews song, like the ants marching, just kind of doing your thing like everybody else.
Hmm.
And then when that happened, it was a big, you know, um, cold glass of water to the face. That
Yeah.
aha, like maybe I'm not doing the thing that I'm meant to be doing. So I moved to Wyoming from Boston, spent that winter trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And it was, I really thought I was going to do like join the military or become a firefighter
Hmm.
because of those, like, that was that's what the people that were having the most impact at that time were doing.
Hmm.
But I eventually decided to, I, I kind of, I didn't, I didn't want to do the military because in my mind, I was like, that meant killing people.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I associate that with, especially if I wanted to be in the military, I wanted to be like special forces and that seemed like really, um, a violent existence.
Yeah.
And the firefighting was honestly, it was two things. There was a lot of red tape because so many people wanted to do that at the time that getting into the firehouse of your choice was very slim. And I wanted to control where I lived.
Yeah.
So I became a personal trainer because I was doing triathlons at the time. And so I just started my own business where I went from people's homes and worked them out in their garage or their basement. And it was really fulfilling, and I loved it. I loved it. I thought about it all the time. I was single and young and had tons of energy, and I would, train people from 5:30 in the morning till 8 at night, and it was awesome. But it was also really lonely because I
Yeah.
was a mid to late 20s, and I had no coworkers and no peers, and I would just go from, you know, soccer moms to soccer dads, back to, corporate CEO, back to so I then became during the afternoons started working at a traditional health club. So I'd go to people's homes in the morning, and then the evening I would work at a health club, and I had coworkers, and that was very fulfilling. And from that, I found strength and conditioning and started being a strength and conditioning coach at a high school. And then from there, found CrossFit, and then opened a gym and trained the CrossFit Games athletes, which allowed me to have a platform to talk to a wider audience. So I do feel like I've had this opportunity to take something I'm really passionate about, which is to help other people live a life, in line with their values and purpose and passion, and find out what that thing is. And I think that health has to be an integral part for anybody because without health, it's really hard to be happy. It's no matter how successful you are, how aligned you are with your vision and purpose. If I like the saying, like, even if you're a gazillionaire on your yacht in the Greek islands, but you have strep throat, the only thing that you're thinking about is that next time you swallow.
Yep.
So you have to have your health. Like, without that, it's really hard to fill other people's cups if your cup is not filled itself. So that's where it kind of starts with me, is like, let's get people healthy. And then from there, we can help them, live the most optimal lives that they can.
Yeah. I love the perspective of a healthy person has a million problems, but an unhealthy person has only one problem.
Yeah.
And when it really comes down to it, I've found, at least over these past few years, I've taken my health more serious than ever. It's more of a mental game than it is anything, and I'm excited to jump into that side of things because I find that I get more of a mental gain than I do anything realistically. And for you, I think a lot of taking that leap to begin with, to even start it from just personal training to where you are today, like, it must have been scary taking the leap to begin with, out of the finance job like that. Was it? I think a lot of people get to a point where they're so frustrated with where they're at that they have to take a leap, or like they're putting themselves in a position to, they need to, almost. Do you think that you put yourself in that position, or what allowed you to be able to really see that it was possible? Like, what allowed you to really make that leap for yourself?
Yeah. To start, I like to frame things in the right perspective, and
Mhm.
I didn't need to. Need a it's a level of scarcity,
Absolutely.
and you have to justify needs.
Mhm.
And I operate out of wants, and I want to go to, because if when I went in to talk to my boss that I was going to be leaving, She's like, nobody left. So she's like,
Yeah.
what do you mean you're leaving? Like, where are you going? What are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to move to Wyoming and do nothing. And you're like, how do you justify that? You can't justify it based off, but if you're like, I want to,
Yeah.
like the conversation's over. You don't have to justify your wants. So that's the way I think that we should all operate, is out of this level of wants.
Hmm.
Like, what do you want to do? And it's not a matter of seeking pleasure. Like that's a thing that's really missed in terms of this want conversation.
Hmm.
It's not about I want to go to the party, go to the concert, take these substances because they make me feel better in the moment, play video games or watch Netflix. That's not the want we're talking about. The want is the want in line with your values and the vision that you have for a fulfilled life. And once you get that, there's no level of justification you need whatsoever. This is what I want for my life. Okay, then we're done there. If we do that, then you don't have to get yourself to this place where you, quote, need to make a change.
Yeah.
What's happening is when that happens, people aren't having the good, long, introspective conversations with themselves. Am I living a life in accordance with my own inner values? And that's what happened during COVID for a lot of people. It gave them that opportunity to have that conversation. That's why we have this, there was the Great Depression, and now we have the Great Resignation, where
Yeah.
everyone's like, peace, I don't need to do this thing. And they're right. They don't need to do it. And they want to do something that's in line with their wants.
Yeah.
Cool. If that means that you make 20K less a year, but you have this additional level of freedom and you feel that you're living a life in accordance with the way that you were set out to do it, that is fulfilling, there's no need to justify that to anybody.
Yeah. I love that perspective, and I'm so grateful that you brought in the mindset that we use need as there's a lot of limiting phrases, shoulds, needs, and I'm excited to get into all of them because so much of of the way that we speak, we're not conscious of the way that it plays out in our lives. And for you to be able to see that within yourself, what was the mental chatter like? Like, as much as you wanted to do it, there had to have been, or maybe there wasn't, but was there still the mental chatter there of like, what if this doesn't work out though?
Yeah. I don't want to say it wasn't there, but I also lucky enough to come from a really supportive family
Yeah.
that, um, I actually moved to Wyoming with my brother.
Got you.
So it was like my family was all for it, at least at the time. I
Yeah.
think when I came back and I was like, I'm going to be a personal trainer, I think they were like, oh, damn. But I, I'm not, I think that if you can operate within the present moment in line with your long-term vision. So, my saying is like, excellence is nothing more than creating the picture of what you believe that looks like,
Yeah.
and then take the back up, begin with the end in mind and take the necessary steps to get there.
Hmm.
It's the same thing if you're trying to create a business or start a family. You want to know what you want your family to, what do you want your family to look like? I'm not necessarily like two boys, two girls, and,
Of course.
a dog and a white picket fence, but when you come home from work, what do you want that feeling to be? Like when you arrive at your house at 6 o'clock and your kids are there and your spouse is there, what's the feeling you want when you walk in the door?
Hmm.
Begin with that. And then we work backwards from there. So, in terms of life and trying to make those choices of, well, I'm leaving corporate America to kind of do this unknown that's, a lot riskier, but potentially there's the higher upside, but there's a lot more freedom. And there's like, you weigh all these things. And that's where I think people get caught up in like the pros and cons list and they see which side of the ledger is bigger. And that's not the right way, because one thing on the pro side could outweigh the 30 things on the negative side.
Yeah.
And that is this in accordance with the life that you have envisioned for yourself? And if you settle for less, that's a definition of complacency. And this is your life. Like nobody else is going to do it for you. So if we don't feel like you are living a life that we are going to get to the end, our deathbed, look back on it and go, I'm so glad that I ... I'm
Mhm.
so glad that I spent my time doing this, made these decisions, lived in this place with these people, having these kinds of conversations. Then the time to make that change is now, and not at a whim and not spontaneously just to make the change, but to be brave enough to do the things that are going to set your heart on fire. People always say, like, what should I do? Like, where can I provide value? Like, where's the opportunities? Where's the place to create the financial security? My belief is, do what sets your heart on fire. Because, I really like this saying that is, if you do what looks like work to others but feels like play to you,
Mhm.
no one can compete. So our goal should be to blur the line between work and play. If you don't know, like for you, James, when you're doing this podcast, if you love it and it fulfills you and it feels awesome and you kind of would be doing this thing anyway, who can compete with you then? If you are you. Now, you're not trying to be Joe Rogan, you're not trying to be Tim Ferriss,
Mhm.
but you're doing this your way, your special uniqueness coming to it, and it feels like play. That's the thing to chase.
I'm in full alignment with that. This is my second podcast of the day, be- because it doesn't feel like work, right? And I think even for podcasting specifically, like I think a big reason that most podcasts fail is because they aren't in alignment with what they really want to do. I remember when I started this podcast, I started in my car because I wasn't able to have guests on the show, and so I knew that this was the path I wanted to go down. So let me get started as soon as I possibly could. And I lost a lot of family growing up, so I thought the exact thought as you said is like, if you're gonna get to the end of your life, the thought of did I really live? Did I really like live in a full alignment with my values and the kind of conversations I wanted to have, the people I wanted to surround myself with? Well, you better start making some changes right now. And I think it's so important to really take that into perspective now or even yesterday, because the longer that we wait, the more that I think that fear and that pressure and so much of our complacency in life just tears us down inside, and then we feel like we can't make that leap, and the more scary it becomes. There's a part of your bio that I loved, and I think it kind of like it talks about it a little bit. What we're talking about here is trying to remember that life is not a dress rehearsal, and I think that so many of us live life seeing it like that, and so they don't take the leaps that they really want to make because they're thinking about what everyone else is thinking, and they're not allowed. They don't allow themselves to be imperfect or to suck or to learn, especially in the beginning when things are going to look a lot worse. Whether when things start to compound later on before they start to compound. So how can people start to overcome that, and why is that so prominent to you?
I think we all, a lot of us search for recognition or acceptance by society's definition of success,
Yeah.
which is a certain level of fame, accolades, awards, or financial success. And the values that which by the way, the research shows does not equal happiness or fulfillment.
I don't know.
It releases huge amounts of dopamine, which is this, but that can be had through cocaine and gambling. So it can be as destructive as cocaine and gambling. The things that are not rewarded is by society or looked up to is peace of mind, freedom, freedom to and freedom from, and love and closeness and affection. Because it's hard to, you can't show that in an Instagram post.
Yeah.
And you can't show that by driving a Bentley. So it's these easy things that we continue to chase because we associate those things with the feel goods. And it's true. Like when you get a raise, like let's say that you're running this podcast and you get X number of dollars for an ad. And then all of a sudden people are like, James, Your podcast is killing it. We're going to double the ad spend. Whoa, that feels really good. So you associate feeling good with increased earning potential,
Of course. Mhm.
which that's not really the thing. Feeling good is having a hit of ecstasy. Like that's not the healthy thing that creates long-term fulfillment. So if we can disassociate, we feelings are lying to us. That's we have your feelings are liars. They're going to keep you away from the struggle because who wants to struggle? But that's what we all want is what's on the other side of struggle. So if you want to have a healthy, good-looking, functional body that carries you through into your 80s, 90s, 100, you have to suffer and struggle now. You have to do some push-ups. You have to do some squats. You have to eat the good food and say no to the bad. But that doesn't make you feel good in the moment. Nature's given us these little tiny things like endorphins that you can latch onto every now and then. But none of those are going to compare to the way the feel good you have from biting into that donut.
Oh yeah.
Just not. Or surfing through Instagram or clicking on Netflix. Like those immediate gratifications are always going to outweigh.
Mhm.
Well, if we rely on our feelings, we're always going to come up short in the long run. And the difference between those at our super and different term of success, but
Of course.
that get to where they are living fulfilled, happy, healthy lives, with the way I describe it is with peace of mind. I think that that's really what we're all looking for. But when you get that, bump up in your ad spend, you have a moment of peace of mind. Ah, everything's gonna be okay. But 3 weeks later, that's gone, and you're looking for the next up. What we need to do is distrust that little short term dopamine hit, that little short term peace of mind for the long term. And the long term is how you feeling when you're by yourself, and how you feeling when you're sitting at the dinner table with the people that you're the closest to. Those are the real things. How you feeling when you wake up in the morning and you're next to your spouse? How you feeling when you haven't seen your kids all day and then they walk in the room? And if they, you haven't seen them all day because you've been at work and you left before that, and you get home and they come running up to you and they're like, Dad, da, 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 and you're like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah.
To me, that's actually your life. Your life is not, to a certain extent, how much you have on your Instagram followers. It's not what you have in the bank. Now, those can play to those things. I'm not saying I'm not saying they're off the list,
Mhm.
because what we need is freedom to and freedom from. We need a freedom from oppression, freedom from slavery, freedom from abuse and trauma, and freedom to do what you want. Freedom to be able to spend your time at your kid's hospital bed if they're sick for 6 months. So in order to get that level of freedom, we have to have some sort of financial security. So that's why it's not just about hedonism and go seek pleasure. You have to do the work as well. But if we're going to do the work, why wouldn't we do the work that's in line with the things that are going to make us fulfilled as well? Blur the line between work and play, make it look like work to others, feel like play to us, so that nobody can compete with us. You're the only person that can bring the best of James to this world. The only one. There's never in the history of existence has there ever been someone named James that's going to do the things that you're going to do.
Yeah. One of my first mentors brought up a perspective to me that had such a massive impact, and it's what you're speaking on right now. And I bring it up to everyone that I speak to, every client that I work with, everyone that I interact with. It feels like that you do a disservice by not bringing your unique gifts into the world. And it's like exactly what you said there, is that no one can replicate, whether you have a twin or you don't have a twin. No one can replicate what you bring to the world. And so if you're not bringing what you can bring into the world, you're doing a disservice to the world, because whether you see it or not, or whether you don't have the confidence or you don't believe it's possible, someone needs what you have. Someone in some respect. And so I think it's so valuable to take that into perspective. And I also think that the mindset of what you said earlier is like I think we need to change the way that we our scorecard on life of how we are measuring ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Tom Bilyeu has one of I think it's probably my favorite quote of all time, truthfully, is that all that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And
Hmm.
so when I think of that, is like no matter how much money you're making, no matter how many followers you have, no matter what it comes down to, how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, when nothing's around, when you're with your thoughts? And I think that a lot of us were unsettled. And so for you, I know, especially when you were younger, um, there was a voice in your head that maybe you didn't see yourself as so smart. I know that you were dyslexic, and that really helped you on later on in life to be more intentional with how you learned and grew your business. But how have you worked through that throughout your life?
Yeah, so I really struggled in school because of being dyslexic and not understanding that that wasn't a measure of um, how well you can do things.
Yeah.
It was a matter of how well you can do that thing, which is take information either from a book or what a teacher is telling you and regurgitate it back to them in the fashion that they want it. And that's not really what life actually rewards. In certain fields and professions, it is, but certainly not in mine, which is being an entrepreneur and a coach. And what I kind of told myself was, "You're not very smart." And then I started to get into different fields, be most coaching, different sports, and realizing that I could connect with people fairly well, and it wasn't a matter of being able to read out loud that dictated how intellectual you are. And it did serve me because it gave me an additional level of um, I feel like when I'm able to learn something, I internalize it to the point where I'm not going to pass over it. So here's an example. If I'm reading a book or listening to a podcast, Tom Bilyeu or something like that, and I hear something that I really want um, to own, I don't move past it, which I think a lot of people do because they're such good readers that it's kind of like watching a movie, kind of like half paying attention. And
Yeah.
the goal is kind of like to get to the end of the movie
Yeah.
instead of, can I recite the movie? Can I? And that's where I'll stick and stay on something. And if I'm listening to the podcast, I might rewind and listen to that section 4, 5, or 6 times in a row. And if I'm in my car, I'll pause it and I'll say it out loud again, and I'll do it and I'll say it out loud again. And then I'll put up my phone on, voice record, and I'll speak it into notes. And then when I get back from done driving, I'll go back and fix all the autocorrects. So I'm like seeing it 4, 5, 6 times because as a coach, if it's valuable for me I'm like, it's an aha thing, like, ooh, that's good. I want to be able to share that with other people.
Absolutely.
And it's only through that work of internally putting it in to own it. I don't want to rent it where it's just coming in, it's here for a little bit, and then it's going to be gone. If it's valuable, I want to make sure it's a part of my language. It's part of my toolbox going forward as well. So I can then use that for other people. And I don't know if I would, who knows, if I would have had that, had I not had that struggle, in academia, because that's when, I don't think I even read a book all through high school.
Me either.
And then, and it was just like, well, I just don't read. I'm not good at reading. And I can remember being in college and there was a religion class I took, and you had to, the professors went around the room. We took turns reading passages from the Bible. And that was my biggest fear, was reading out loud, because I was so terrible at it. And because I was so afraid and so terrible at it, when it became my turn, it got like, it compounded on top of itself because I went so self-critical. I can remember the words on the page just completely getting blurry, not seeing anything, that I ended up just like skipping the class for the whole semester because it was such a traumatic experience for me. And then what I realized as well was, um, that even being, that being dealt that certain hand doesn't mean that that's the hand you have to play. Because when I end up having kids and I started reading really simple books out loud to the kids, go dogs, go, like that type of stuff, like the Dr. Seuss stuff out loud,
Mhm.
that's all of a sudden when I did it and I did it and I did it and I did it, my reading actually went way up, and it really reinforced this understanding. People say that you got to get outside your comfort zone to to learn and improve, and I do not agree with that at all,
Yeah.
because that's what when you're out that far outside your comfort zone. Now, outside your comfort zone, for me, you have to be in the sweet spot. If you're totally in your comfort zone, you're not even showing up. Like that's
Mhm.
just not even showing up. But once you show up, it's about consistency. And so you only go up to that level of threshold that you are not becoming a critic to yourself.
Yeah.
Once you become a critic, it's it's you're it's very few people like the David Goggins that can kind of like work themselves through that.
Of course.
Most of us, if we are, it's too exhausting. So once you show up, this is like the gym. Once you show up, the goal is not to get outside your comfort zone and like work your ass off and like put more weight on the bar and go faster and do more reps. It's no, like you're here. Now once you're here, the goal after this is to show up tomorrow. Cuz if you don't show up, there's no change can happen. You got to make it comfortable enough that they're going to come back. And with enough repetition, time and time again. This is the John Wooden thing. John Wooden's, 8 steps of learning is um, explain, show, try, repeat, 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 repeat. Like that's what you just have to like keep going and keep going and keep going. And if you make it too uncomfortable, people aren't going to go. So an example of that would be like, imagine people like trying to like start a cold plunge
Mhm.
practice. Well, if the first time they get in a cold plunge, it's 34 degrees and you make them stay in there for 8 minutes, they're not going to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're just not, it's too painful. But if the first time you do it, you have it at 48 degrees and you have them stay into it for 60 seconds, they get out and they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then just kind of like the frog in the boiling water, you slowly turn it up, but you don't allow them to jump out of the pot. If it's too hot, they're getting out. Weird analogy where I went from hot to cold there, or cold to hot.
No, but it is really valuable though. I was speaking with Brad Stolberg. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but he wrote a book called Master of Change, and I think so much of what we do is we try to push ourselves to the limit, to the point where then tomorrow's tough to show up, and then the next day is tough to show up, and that mindset of intensity just can only go so long. We really can't do it much longer. And if we're really trying to make this a lifestyle and part of our identity instead of a a season of life almost,
Right.
then we have to stop like a rep before, or we have to stop um, when we're reading a book, a page before, or writing a book, whatever that comes down to. I think that
Yeah.
so much of that is really intentional. And I think too, like you said, I think when I started reading books, I didn't read a book in high school whatsoever. I thought I was not a reader. My mom, my sister would always tell me that you're going to start reading books eventually in your life, and I always said I'm not a reader. It's just not who I am. And so I started reading books that I actually enjoyed and started to
Right.
realize that that is the kind of person that I want to become. But I did the same thing where I just want to take in as much information as I can, think that's going to be a solution. Then I started to work with people, helping them show up better for their goals. And I started to realize that if I need to revert or help them explain, or if I need to explain something from a book, I need to be able to understand it in such a way that I need to be able to explain it to them. And so it's so much more over comprehension than it is completion. And so
Right.
I love that you spoke on that, because I think so much of that is really important. Um, go ahead.
I think it's really powerful what you just said there is like in terms of the change agents,
Yeah.
what we're looking for is actually not the intensity and how much, but what's the minimal
Yeah.
viable dose? Like, what's the minimum you can do today? And people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year,
Yeah.
but massively underestimate what they accomplish in a decade. So it's not about what you're doing today, this week, or even this month. I don't care how many CrossFit classes you did this month. What I
Yeah.
want to know is how many did you do over the last decade?
Mhm.
Because nothing sustainable, nothing that is going to have a long enough tail from 1 month of intensity. It's not about doing the meditation or the yoga or the cold plunge or whatever, the 10,000 steps for a month. It is, what is the minimal viable dose that we can reset the trajectory of the way you're going to live the totality of your existence? Now, that can be too daunting for people. So we're not looking for like this thing forever. It's just like, what are we going to do today? Like, if we're talking about nutrition, like, tell me all this stuff that goes in with the nutrition conversations. And people miss the thing like, what'd you have for breakfast? Like insulin resistance, and is it about keto, and
Yeah.
like what about mitochondria, and all this, like no, let's just talk about breakfast. Like,
Yeah.
what are we having for breakfast? And this real world thing, like the actual behaviors, not theoretical, not intellectual, not academic, not what's happening in studies. Like, you today, what's the thing that we're going to do to turn the dial just half a degree? And over the course of years, that half a degree it's unrecognizable in a decade, just a half of a degree. Whereas what people try to do instead is make this huge, massive change, 10, 15, 20, 30% tomorrow. And then in 30 days, they're back to square one.
Absolutely. And I revert this back to, I don't know why I always think of podcasting because we're both podcasters, of course, but I seen a statistic once where I think the average podcaster makes about 7 episodes, I want to say, or
Mm.
something in that regard. And I thought of that and I thought, man, I think I made 7 episodes my first week. Like, to think about that, I'm 180 episodes or so in, and to think I've always thought decade. Like, forget the year, forget 2 years, 2 years in today, uh, almost, and or over at this point. And it, I always think the longer term aspect of things, because when you focus on direction instead of like your current results, that's going to lead you down the path. And it seems like that's what most successful people do in their lives. There was a quote in one of your books, or maybe it wasn't a quote, but it's something that you say very frequently that I absolutely love. It's that our greatest distractions are just the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think that so much of this podcast was made because so many of us are telling ourselves stories that don't serve us, and we have to unlearn so much of us, so many beliefs that just don't serve us throughout our lives. So how do you see that happen, whether it's within yourself or people that you've worked with, and how have you been able to help people really just overcome that within their lives?
Yeah, it's what we were talking about earlier before, which is what you put after "I'm the type of person that"
Hmm.
is one of the it's going to set the trajectory for your life.
Yeah.
And where a lot of people default to is a victim mindset. You know, um, we need to recognize our own internal dialogue. No one is going to have more influence over your life, set the trajectory for your life, create the fulfillment or lack thereof, than that weird, strange roommate that lives inside your head.
Yeah.
And that's all that voice is that voice. It can be the nagging, annoying 2-year-old child, or it can be the greatest mentor and coach that you've ever had.
Hmm.
But shifting from that critic to coach takes work. And that work starts with awareness. We first have to understand there's a big set of the population that don't even recognize that there's a voice in their head, period.
Which blows me away. Blows me away.
And when you ask them about that, the voice in their head goes, "There's no voice in here."
I don't understand that. I seen it was
Yeah.
50% something that I seen of yours, and I was like, How? Every day it's there.
So we have that, and understanding, just listening to that voice, not even trying to change it. We're not, just listening to the voice and that level of awareness. And if you can bring a certain level of understanding of the different frameworks that that voice can take.
Yeah.
If we understand the different frameworks, we can start to like just get some understanding of, is this helping or hurting me? And the lowest level of self-talk is that victim mindset, which is a refusal to take ownership of anything, blame others, and woe is me. And we all have this on some level. Like
Yeah.
I have it all every day in some form or fashion. So we're never going to be like, it's not like being in an elevator where you're like, now you're at level 2, now you're at level 3.
Mhm.
It's more like this up and down, almost like a game of Pong where you're,
Yeah.
but we wanted to just narrow the 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 barriers to where this thing goes. And if every now and then it dips into the victim mindset, we don't want to beat ourselves up for it because it's natural. But if we can rise above that victim mindset, then you start to get into this next level, which is a pessimistic, which is not necessarily, you know, like it's all about me. It's like this is sucks for me, but it's like this sucks in general, right?
Mhm.
This like COVID sucks. It's not COVID. You know, if you listen to people, you'll hear it, and once you become aware of this, you can't not see it. You can't
No.
not hear it.
Yeah.
But it changes from like, why is this happening to me, to, oh my gosh, this COVID thing is terrible. Why is this happening? This is going to suck. I can't believe I have to do this for 2 years. I had these things planned that, it was now they're canceled. And, the masks are stupid. The masks are, why aren't other people wearing masks? It's like, there's just this negativity.
Yeah.
We know that people that have a negative mindset cannot perform up to their potential. So what we try to do is get people to see, try to reframe that and see opportunities instead of obstacles. And that's that optimistic mindset. And what's strange is that, not strange, and because I think I fell into this for a long time, is most people think that the like
It's
that's
the
the
highest.
highest level of mindset.
Yeah.
And that's actually not the case at all. That's just not as detrimental. It's kind of neutral in terms of the productivity levels of the way you talk to yourself.
Mhm.
Because at least we're not giving ourselves the negative talk, and we just kind of like, we're looking for every silver lining. You look for and that's what you try to do. It's like we're trying to not see that we are the center of the universe and things don't line up for you, which is absolute insanity. Like the universe could care less whether it rains on James' birthday. Like that's just not a thing.
Of course.
And then we're trying to move past the pessimist thing, which is like, this sucks. Listen to why this isn't, complain, whine, make excuses, to the optimist. But the optimist isn't even necessarily the highest because, first off, sometimes the pessimist does outperform the optimist
Absolutely.
in some sales circumstances because they look at all the ways that this thing could go wrong and they have contingency plans. And then they also brace, which is something that athletes and prisoners of war, it's been proven that actually pessimists will outperform optimists because optimists lack the ability to brace, and when it crumbles, they fall apart
Mhm.
because they go, "It's gonna be okay, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be great," until it's not, and true tragedy sets in, and they're not ready for it,
Yeah.
and they realize that it was all just rose-colored glasses, and maybe it's not rosy. So what we want to do is the level we can all aspire to. And again, kind of where this conversation started, just again, is like, what is the framework that you're having these conversations within your head?
Mm.
That's the thing. And if we can get to the point where we're realist, where we understand that there is good and bad in life, like that just, it's so, once you understand this, like, the way I've said this before is like, even dolphins get sunburned, like, and trop, palm trees have to withstand tropical storms.
Yeah.
It's like there is struggle in life, and that's what we're supposed to have. You are supposed to have. You're going to be late for meetings. Your kids are not going to say what you want to say. Your coworkers are not going to follow through on their promises. Your boss is going to make you work on the weekend. You're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. It's not going to line up with the vision that you want all the time. That's life, period. And we shouldn't expect anything different. That way, when these things happen, we realize that there is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It removes the judgment that we have on ourselves and on life in general. And there is the higher level, which we can all aspire to be, which very few of us will ever get to, which is that warrior mindset, which we are seeking out challenges.
Mhm.
Because the true warrior knows that once they dominate the dojo, they need to go searching the world for a worthy foe. Because only up against that worthy foe can they pull the best out of themselves. They need the external resistance to see the best that they have inside of them. Just like you cannot become as strong as you can possibly become just by moving your own body. You can't. It's just, you can't. You need loads greater than your own body to be able to maximize your true strength. It's the same thing. We can't get everything that we want in terms of our best versions of ourselves only from us internally. We need the external challenges. We need that if we're going to become the best version of ourselves. But only the warrior mindset can understand that. So what we need to do is at least get to the optimist. Like we need to get, because anything below that, you're just storytelling.
Yeah.
It's just, even the optimist, you're telling stories. Until you get to the realist, you're just telling stories about what's happening. The realist accepts it. I was camping and it rained the whole time. Like, you just accept it and you move on. There's nothing you can do about it at that point. If you're the optimist, but it was fine because we were able to, or anything else. It's just storytelling. And storytelling is creating drama. Well, you're being melodramatic. You're infusing more drama into your life than is necessary. And this actually has detrimental effects to our health and well-being because you are losing peace of mind because you're constantly trying to storytell around these events rather than just accepting them. And that's why we become the way we started this conversation off, very aware of the words that we're using things like we talked about earlier, which is like wants versus needs, shoulds versus wills, have tos versus get tos, can't versus won't. And we wear bracelets, I'm showing you right now for people who are listening, that say on the bracelet, never whine, never complain, never make excuses.
Yeah.
Because that's where it has to start. We need to get ourselves out of the pessimist and victim mindset, at least up to that neutral optimistic mindset. Anything below that, and we're truly hurting our own lives.
I feel like every single word that you say is just this conversation lights me up, man. Because I remember, like you said a minute ago, was once you see this kind of stuff, when you take this perspective on, you can never go back. And I remember there was a moment in my life where I instead of asking why is this happening to me, because I lost a lot of family growing up, COVID was happening, I just got out of surgery, all of the external things were coming down on me. And instead of asking why is this happening to me, I asked how is this happening for me? And then so my reticular activating system, of course, started to look out and find reasons for why it was happening for me and started to look further into the future for how it was going to serve me. And I think that's the optimist in me, of course. And then there's also the realist of how can I get past this now? But I think that it's so powerful to take that into perspective because these levels of mindset are so impactful in life because if we don't even have the awareness of it, like you said, to begin with, we're just going to be going through life just telling ourselves a story that is simply not true. And really just living by this fragmented reality that doesn't have to be our reality at the end of the day. And we have the ability to break through that. And I think so much of that does come down to the physical aspect of things. And I think that's where it starts for most people is where, okay, I'm gonna work out, for example. I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna say I'm gonna do 10 reps and you do 10 reps and then you prove to yourself that you can do the 10 reps. And then that leads into you can run a mile and then it just leads on and on and on. And I think so much of our internal narrative breaks us down and tells us that we can't do what we say that we want to do, or our body is telling us that, man, we need to stop, but we really can go further. So how do you work with yourself and with clients and people that you've worked with throughout your experience? How have you been able to push people past what they think is possible?
So you nailed it, James. We could have people journal, meditate, read scripture,
Yeah.
do silent retreats, go for long walks in the woods, sing Kumbaya together, sit on a couch, and tell me your problems about your childhood.
Yep.
My contention is nothing will get you to the place we want you to be faster than go and do a hard training session. That sounds weird because like we've never used that for that.
Yeah.
Training has been about the body and the muscles. But the greatest adaptation from training is between the ears.
Absolutely.
That's where this thing actually has the most effect. And the reason for that is anyone that's done a hard training session can't not hear that voice.
Yeah.
So it becomes so like, because you have the self one and the self two battling so loudly, particularly when you do it in a group setting, because you see other people. Like go run a 5K, just like something as simple as that, with 200 other people, and you have this thing of like, oh, this hurts, I want to walk, I should slow down. Then you have the other one like, no, just get to the next aid station, stay in front of that person, go catch them, you can do this, we want to set a PR, try and be under 20 minutes. And it's this battle back and forth between self one and self two. Self one is the one that wants to eat the donuts, sit on the couch, is looking for the instant gratification and the pleasure now.
Yep.
Self two is the one that wants to live a life in line with your greatest ambitions, goals, values, and principles. What we want to be able to do is have more and more and more of the self two talking to us, not the self one. And the more hard training you do, which is what you just said, I'm going to go and do a set of 10. You do 10. You're like, tomorrow I'm going to do 12, and you do 12. Self two goes, dude, I have a place in this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak up. And it's for Freud, it was the ego, superego, and the id.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that thing that's sitting in the background goes like, self two, like you're kind of cool. Like and that that annoying little brother self one, like just settle down. Let's take a back seat a little bit, and we get to live our life more in accordance with these things. Mm-hmm. That's the reason it's hard training. So I know we talked about this like minimal vial dose before,
of course,
but in order to reshape the mind, this is that dichotomy between, it's got to be enough in the beginning that you're creating the consistency. And people talk about all the time like 21 days to create a habit. Total crap. Mm-hmm. 10 years.
Yeah.
It's like I meditated every single day for that's an exaggeration. I meditated for about 330 days 1 year. That all the research would say that's habits established. I still hadn't done it long enough. But for me, working out, because I've been working out 5-6 days a week for 15 years, I don't think about it. I wake up and it just happens. It's the brushing your teeth thing. You've done it that many times. So for us just to rely on our habits and not, basically, what I mean by that is your subconscious, and not have self two battle self one, it's a 10-year thing. So we have to do these little things that allow self two to rule, or at least have a bigger voice in that conversation. Skip the donuts. Don't snooze. Don't watch the news. Read a book. Go to the gym. That's what we need to do. And the more we do that, the more it builds, your subconscious builds up into, I am the type of person that gets up at 4:30 every morning to do my push-ups. I am the type of person that has hard conversations with my spouse when it needs to be. I am the type of person that sticks up for people that are being neglected or abused. I am the type of person that says yes to the salad and no to the bread basket. I am the type of person that goes to bed and doesn't scroll in through social media. Yeah. I am the type of person that is the most impactful thing, and it doesn't happen overnight. So what you need to do is just start telling yourself that story. You just start saying it. And like you said, the reticular activation system will start looking for things because we have this confirmation bias as human beings that we want to live a life and we want to have behaviors and actions that are in line with our own self-image. So if you are said like I'm the type of person that I'm funny, like I'm a funny person, you're going to look for opportunities to be funny. If you
Yeah.
say no, I'm the person that kind of like doesn't talk a lot at parties, you're going to look for opportunities not to talk at parties. So it's this matter of like, you know, hard training sessions are the shortcut to mental development. Faster than church, faster than therapy, faster than journaling, faster than meditating. I worked with a Wim Hof breath coach for a while, and I kind of like,
Yeah.
I use his analogy for, he said, 5 minutes into a Wim Hof breathing session, he can get himself into a deeper subconscious state than he could through an 8-day silent retreat.
Wow.
So that's what that really challenging, hard breath work session is for that mental peace of mind.
Mhm.
Well, really hard physical training is that same thing. You can get yourself into that deep, deep conversation with yourself very, very quickly, where you hear self one battling self two very quickly. And can you get yourself to side with self two a little bit more? You do that, and all of a sudden it starts to ripple outside the hour of the gym into the other 23 hours. And that's really what the gym is for. It's not to become better at the gym, it's to allow the lessons we learn inside the gym to echo outside.
So true. And I think that's why it's like for me, I used to believe I was a later gym goer. And the more that I do it, it's first thing in the morning. I put my contacts in and I'm out of the house as soon as I can because it sets the prefaces for how the day's gonna go and how did I show up for the gym? Did I do my 20 reps that I said I was gonna do, or did I do 19 or did I do 21? Like how did I show up for that? Because that reflects on how I'm gonna show up for the rest of my day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I believe in full support of that. There's one last question I ask every guest, and like I said, it encapsulates what I try to do with this podcast, where so many of us are living by a story that don't serve us, that are holding us back from accomplishing a life that we deserve to live. And the question is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
Ooh, it's a good question, and I want to give it justice.
Yeah.
That I can do it all, because you can't. Everything has um, give and take. So if I'm going to be the best possible dad I can possibly be, it means I'm not going to be the best business leader that I can be. And understanding that there is I believe, a appropriate balance to life. And if you want to um, be the most famous person in the world, you might be sacrificing other things like happiness, relationships, and fulfillment along the way. And I think in my, you know, early 30s, I thought that would have been more attainable, at least on a couple different fronts. Like I can be the best coach, I can be a good business leader, and I can be a good family person. And I've realized that um, it's not necessarily as simple as the teeter-totter model, like a seesaw,
Mhm.
which I think people understand very, very well. It's like, you're going to put your effort into your career or your family.
Right.
I think of it more as like a frisbee on a pencil, where it's this constant kind of like it's multifaceted, it's
Yeah.
three-dimensional, and the goal is that to keep it from tipping off the pencil. And I'm not going to be the fittest guy in my gym. And I don't want to be at this point because I'm trying to unlearn that need, as we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
or even that desire and want, because I know it comes at the expense of something else. And I don't want to give up that something else. I would rather be healthy and fit, not the fittest, I'd rather be have a successful business, not the most successful,
Yeah.
because I know what anything above that costs in some other form or fashion.
So powerful. Ben, thank you so much for your time. I can't express my gratitude enough for your wisdom and your presence. All of your links will be in the show notes, of course. Thank you again.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.